Once upon a time, in a beautiful and flourishing kingdom called Indandria, a land whose air was always fragrant with jasmine, rose, and 1,000 blooming flowers, there lived a king and queen beloved by every soul who walked upon their enchanted soil, for not only were they just rulers, but their kindness flowed like the sweet springs that wound through their lush fields and blossoming gardens, nourishing every corner of their peaceful realm. Birds chirped joyfully upon golden branches, soft breezes carried floral scents across shimmering meadows, and the people lived with laughter, music, and gratitude, for Indandria seemed like a heaven on earth where nothing hurt, nothing lacked, and nothing seemed incomplete except for one wound hidden deep in the hearts of the king and queen. They had no children. For many years beneath the starlit sky on the palace rooftop, they prayed with clasped hands, whispering their longing into the night winds, begging that one day God might bless them with a daughter whose presence would complete their world. Then, one radiant morning, the queen approached her husband with trembling joy, her eyes glowing brighter than the dawn itself, and said, "My lord, I believe God has heard our prayers. I think I am going to be a mother." A wave of overwhelming happiness washed over the king, who embraced her with trembling hands, tears filling his eyes as he thanked the heavens. And before long, celebrations erupted throughout the kingdom. Bells chimed from every tower, musicians filled the palace with melody, and the people decorated the markets and streets with silk, petals, and ribbons. All of Indandria rejoiced, for at last hope had come to the royal family. When spring arrived with flowers blooming in full splendor, butterflies dancing, and rivers glistening like silver, the queen gave birth to a daughter more beautiful than any fairy tale could describe. Her eyes sparkled like the blue sky reflecting in still water, her smile glowed like the rising sun, and her little hands curled like delicate petals. The king named her Haniya. Trumpets sounded, dancers twirled, children ran about laughing, and the kingdom celebrated for 7 days. As tradition demanded, the king ordered all fairies of the realm to be summoned to the palace so they might bless the newborn princess with gifts of magic, virtue, and protection. One by one the fairies arrived, shimmering with their own light. The fairy of fragrance spread a swirling mist of pink blossoms around the cradle and whispered, "Wherever she goes, she shall carry the scent of peace and beauty." And then the fairy of happiness approached with soft golden wings and said, "I give her a face that will remain gentle, bright, and full of joy," while the fairy of love placed her glowing hand above the infant's heart and murmured, "I fill her spirit with love so pure it will soothe the sorrows of others." Many more fairies blessed her, each gift forming a halo of shimmering energy around the princess. But there was one fairy the king intentionally did not invite, the fire fairy, Sia, known throughout the magical realms for her volatile power and destructive wrath. Flames followed her wherever she went, and the king feared that her unpredictable temper might ruin the celebration. Yet, when Sia discovered she had been excluded, fury ignited inside her like an exploding star. The sky darkened, winds howled, and sudden heat drenched the air as she descended upon the palace in a storm of blazing red fire, her eyes burning with betrayal. Courtiers shrank back, the queen shielded the baby, and the king stood trembling. As Sia stormed into the grand hall, flames swirling around her head like a fiery crown. "So," she hissed, her voice shaking the walls, "you despise fire so much that you banish me from this celebration? You insult me, reject me, humiliate me. Then hear my curse." She lifted her blazing staff as sparks erupted like meteors. "This beloved daughter of yours will survive only in snow and cold. If sunlight or heat ever touches her, she will die instantly." With a scream of rage, Sia vanished in a violent explosion of fire. Silence and terror swallowed the hall. Princess Haniya's face turned pale, her breath stopped, and the queen let out a cry that echoed like shattered glass. The king knelt, helpless, tears falling onto the still face of his child. Just when despair was suffocating the room, a soft and shimmering cold light spread across the walls, turning fear into frozen awe. The frost fairy appeared, wrapped in an aura of snow-white glow. Her presence brought calm, as if winter itself had stepped into the palace with grace and gentleness. "Do not fear," she whispered as snowflakes twirled around her. "I have not yet given my gift." She touched her staff lightly to the cradle, forming a delicate ring of ice around Haniya. A moment later, the princess took a small breath, color returning to her cheeks. The queen sobbed in relief, clutching her child while the frost fairy continued, "This shield will not hold for long. If she remains here, she will die. Only my ice palace can protect her." The king, heartbroken yet desperate, bowed his head and said, "If you can save my daughter, take her. I ask only one thing. Promise she will live." The frost fairy nodded with solemn compassion. She lifted the baby gently from the queen's trembling arms, wrapped her in a blanket of snowlight, and carried her across the mountains to her ice fortress, an enchanted palace made of crystalline walls that glowed like frozen stars, where magical creatures roamed and snowflakes never melted. There, Haniya grew up surrounded by quiet winter beauty. Her closest companion became a little penguin with shiny black eyes, waddling proudly at her side. Together they played among the snow flowers, slid across the icy floors, and burst into laughter that echoed in the cold halls. But though the frost fairy treated her with kindness and love, Haniya's heart often longed painfully for the parents. She barely knew. She would stand by the frosted window, watching distant skies, whispering, "I wish I could see my mother and father just once." The penguin would nuzzle her hand and dance to cheer her, but even he could not hide the sadness in his eyes. Years passed, and Haniya blossomed into a young woman with hair that shimmered like moonlit frost and eyes that sparkled like winter stars. And one day, when the sky was unusually clear and the sun pale and soft, a young prince named Ryan ventured into the far northern mountains. He had heard legends of a magical palace beyond the snow where no living soul dared enter, and his adventurous spirit compelled him to seek out the truth. When he reached the icy valley, his breath caught at the sight of the frost palace. Walls gleamed like silver blue glass, and towers reached the clouds, glimmering with the light of 1,000 frozen moons. Stepping inside cautiously, he wandered through the shimmering halls until he saw, in a garden of snowflowers, a young girl laughing softly while speaking to her penguin companion. Her elegance stunned him. She looked almost unreal, like a being sculpted from the finest winter magic. "Is she human?" he whispered to himself. "Or is she a dream?" But the sound of an ice pot slipping from his hand echoed across the chamber. Haniya jumped, startled. She had never seen another human before. She stepped back in fear, but slipped on the ice. Prince Ryan rushed forward instinctively and caught her before she could fall. Their eyes met, and the moment froze in time. The penguin, protective and angry, pecked at the prince's boots. Ryan laughed gently and said, "Don't worry, I won't harm you. I'm just a traveler." Haniya watched him with wide, uncertain eyes. Was this man real or a figment of her imagination? Before she could ask anything, Ryan collapsed, shivering violently from the brutal cold. Terrified that he might die, Haniya remembered the magical brush gifted to her by the frost fairy, a brush that could turn her drawings into reality. With trembling hands, she sketched a soft bed made of snow clouds and a warm blanket woven from enchanted wool. The items materialized instantly in a swirl of sparkling frost. She placed Ryan upon the bed, fed him hot snowberry soup, and stayed by his side until he woke to see her angelic face hovering above him. When he asked who she was, Haniya replied softly, "I am Princess Haniya of Indandria, but a curse has imprisoned me here all my life." Days passed, and Ryan's feelings for her grew like spring flowers blooming in winter. They shared stories, hopes, and laughter. He taught her about the world she had never seen, and she showed him the wonders of the ice palace. They grew close, so close that love blossomed in their hearts, bright and warm. But warmth was exactly what threatened Haniya's life. "Is there no way to break this curse?" Ryan asked desperately. Haniya, with tears glistening like snow pearls, whispered, "The frost fairy said it could never be undone." Determined, she called out to the mirror of frost, summoning the fairy. When the frost fairy appeared, her gaze softened as she looked at the two young hearts bound by love. But she could only say, "The curse can only break when the ice around her heart melts through love, true love that burns brighter than fear." Then she vanished. Both Haniya and Ryan were left devastated. Ryan, believing destiny cruel, stepped away from her and whispered, "Perhaps we are not meant to be together." He turned and walked out of the palace, heartbroken. Haniya watched him leave until something inside her, something warm she had never known, ignited like a spark. She ran after him, the penguin waddling furiously behind. Ryan glanced back from afar and saw her running across the snow toward the sunlight. "Haniya, stop! The sun will kill you!" He shouted, but she did not stop. Tears streamed down her face as she ran toward the warmth she had been denied all her life. The moment sunlight touched her, the ice around her body began to melt like fragile glass. Ryan sprinted back, grabbed her in his arms as the melting light enveloped them both. And in that burst of warmth and love, the curse shattered. The frost fairy appeared again, her face glowing with joy, and said, "The ice has melted. You are free, Princess Haniya." The transformation completed. Haniya's body became fully human, warm, alive, unbound by magic. Hand in hand, she and Ryan journeyed back to Indandria. When the king and queen saw their daughter returning after years of longing and grief, they ran toward her with tears streaming down their faces. She embraced them tightly, finally feeling the warmth of parental love. The king and queen thanked Ryan from the depths of their hearts. Soon after, a grand celebration was held throughout Indandria, not for a birth this time, but for the victory of love. Princess Haniya and Prince Ryan were married amidst blossoms and blessings. Fairies danced in the sky, flowers rained from above, music filled the kingdom, and light shimmered everywhere. And thus, united by courage, sacrifice, and the power of love, they lived happily ever after.